Today we talk about the best ADCs to climb with. Here we start with Ashe. Ashe is literally the most OP champion right now, mainly because there's a lot of engagers instead of enchanters now. People are testing out a lot of changes regarding supports. And we know it, engage supports always have an hard trouble into Ashe, especially because after they engage, they have to go back, and Ashe does a pretty good job at like playing against them. She has a new build, which is the Exoptics one. Exoptic Ashe has so much range, she deals a lot of damage. It just feels really consistent compared to Kraken, which wasn't even that good back in the time. Aphelios definitely goes on the A tier. It's really hard to learn how to use him, but once you learn him, and in the right draft, you can literally one-shot 99% of the champions. The only problem are a few champions like Malphite and such. It really depends, but I will look out for some specific bans if you decide to play this champion. It is really satisfying if you learn how to play him. Caitlyn sits on the A tier. I think that Caitlyn is slightly weaker compared to Ashe. She plays Exoptics as well. The only difference compared to Ashe is that Ashe can be played also weak side, while Caitlyn feels like a champion that actually needs more love. You need to play around her, you need to do something with her. If not, it kind of like falls off later on into the game. Corki followed a bit in the current meta. The low play rate is mainly because there's a lot of like huge changes in the meta right and left. And usually Corki kind of shines when all the ADCs are bad. Right now, all the ADCs are not that bad, and Exoptics is not even that good of an item on Corki, because he's mostly a spellcaster. So we're seeing a tiny change on hyper carries with Exoptics range, and Corki is kind of like slowed down falling into that, especially because of the enchanter nerfs. Draven goes on the S tier. It's all about learning how the champion works. Once you know it, and once you know your limits, and once you know the champion, this is one of the best champions to rank up in solo queue. You get a shit ton of gold, you get so many resources, and once you know how to use them, and once you know the champion, you will have no troubles ranking up. While people state that Ezreal is a really good champion for solo queue, and I agree with that, I reached multiple time Grandmasters with him, I will still put him in B because of the current meta. We are gonna see a lot of Ashe, we're gonna see lots of Caitlyn, lots of Draven. I do believe that Ezreal does not work really well into them, and on top of that, you also need some huge mechanical skill for it. So I will place him in B, cautiously. The champion is way higher than S tier in reality. It could also be in the OP tier, but it heavily depends on who plays it and which matchup you have. I don't want to advise Ezreal to low elo people, and I don't want to advise Ezreal for high elo people either. You kind of like have to feel it. If you feel it, don't worry about it. You can easily carry with this champion as well. Jhin is the weaker version of Caitlyn and Ashe, so you can't really put them at the same level. Basically, if you play Jhin and you have no push, you can't even farm. That's how powerful this champion is. Ashe and Caitlyn kind of like manages 99% of the times to get the push, while if you play Jhin into Ashe or Caitlyn, most of the times you're gonna lose. Jinx surely goes on the OP tier. You know it, we know it. Jinx always takes advantage of her passive after getting a kill. And this is not really based on you, it's based on the enemy team. If the enemy team make a mistake, randomly out of an hour, Jinx will get a pentakill. Because of the new Exoptics and the range of her rockets, we again are seeing a huge hyper carry masterclass with Emilio in the back, a Lulu, and you can literally kill people from half the map. Kai'Sa falls down extremely hard this patch. It feels like she's not able to actually keep up with the current meta. Jinx has more range, better hyper carry, Ashe has more range, Caitlyn has more range, Draven has more damage. She doesn't have a good early, she doesn't shine in mid game, she doesn't shine in late game. Basically everything kind of like surclasses her, so I wouldn't play her right now. Kalista surely goes on the S tier. There was a buff on Kalista that no one was talking about, and that made her completely crazy strong. I heavily advise you to learn Kalista if you didn't. It's one of the best champions to actually rank up across all elos. I'm not joking, from Iron to Challenger, you can play Kalista every single game and probably reach Challenger with its eyes closed. I advise you to watch my guide. You can see it here on the upper right. I'm gonna put the card. And it's a 3-minute video where you will learn how to play Kalista. Combo in reality is really strong, especially if you play with the AP version, but many people play AD, and I will advise AD Cog anyways. AP Cog instead is really good against Aphelios, champions like that, so it can become really strong. You simply have to learn how to use him and also find a really good build for him. Lucian falls on the B category simply because Exoptic doesn't work as well as on other champions. It's the same thing as always. And he needs Essence River to actually work out quite well. On top of that, there's a huge shift in the meta with Nami slowly disappearing, Milio disappearing, Lulu disappearing. Like, they aren't disappearing, but they are fairly less played. Lucian has a heavy dependence on having this type of enchanters to actually work really well. He's still really strong as a champion, so he's not like Kog'Maw, where if you don't have an enchanter, you're just like really bad and you have no dashes. So he's gonna be on low B tier. I will put every single mage on A tier. They are fairly less played picks, but every time you pick them, you're really consistent. You pick Ziggs with teleport, you never lose the lane. You pick Mel, and you can parry so much stuff. So they are situational picks, but they always work. They always work, so don't be afraid of using them. If you like them and you enjoy this type of playstyle, better for you. I personally don't like it, but if you want to climb up, mages are never wrong. And I put Lux, Mel, Swain, Syndra, Seraphine, Ziggs, all these champions, they are in the same category to me. The important thing is how you play them in the end, and they will always be good for climbing up, at least in the current situation. Misfortune goes on the S tier. It's one of the best champions to start with, and also to reach late game and actually Aguilo with. People don't play MF as much as they should. The only thing that you may have to make sure to do if you want to play in Aguilo is simply to ban Braum, because it's one of the hardest counter of Misfortune. It can literally block everything of your ultimate with 1E. I wouldn't sleep on it. Queen is not a champion, or at least is not a champion anymore in ADC. Nyla is again one of those niche champions that I would love to play, but it's actually heavily dependent on having an enchanter support that can heal you consistently. Stuff like Nami, Soraka, they make Nyla insanely OP. But the main issue is that people are not used to play with Nyla, and they don't want to argue about it. So if you want to play Nyla, you should find a duo, you should find someone to play her with, and ask what you need, because that's how I will play the champion. Samira goes on the A tier. Maybe you might be a bit confused on why, but the reason is simply because I feel like there's a huge lack of stance in the game. People, especially in the higher tiers, are playing a lot of assassins, a lot of champions that tend to not have any type of stun on their kit, and it feels like Samira always has like a really good space in those type of lobbies, because of course there's no stuns, you can just use the new lifesteal boots, enter the position, one-shot everyone, and get out. I will say that currently she's in the A tier, but it's mainly because there's not enough stuns to actually make her awful. Senna falls into the C tier category as well. I feel like Senna is really strong in reality. She has a really interesting static build with Black Cleaver. It kind of works well, but the problem is always the same. If you play ADC and you have a roaming support, it just doesn't resonate. So you gotta have someone to do a with to actually make it work properly. Surely really strong because of the new Delphi rune, but I will say that in solo queue it's not really what you want. Sivir goes in the B category. I will say that Sivir is good at doing a bit of everything. You have some counter matchups. It's nothing crazy though, like it's a good champion, you can snowball well. But usually Sivir does really well on games where like nothing is happening and you're playing really consistent theory. Solo queue, as we all know, it's not always consistent theory. There could be assassins doing stuff right and left, and your champion kind of like wants some time to actually settle up and think about what to do. I'm quite cautious when it comes to Smolder. I think that Smolder is fairly weaker than what it was after the Black Cleaver change, but I still will say that he's in S tier anyways, because if the enemy doesn't manage to punish and you manage to scale, it's probably one of the best hyper carries in the game, along with Aphelios, Jinx. I will put him in S simply because of the ease of use. It's really easy to execute. You simply have to stack like a Nasus, you bonk the minions, get the stacks, and then from there everyone can play him. Now, some people might not agree with me, but I do believe that Tristan X Optics is one of the best ADCs in the game right now, and people are sleeping on it. Counting the scaling levels and the range and the X Optics range, you simply are going in a point where at a certain point you have so much range that people can't even watch you when you start autoing them. So mainly because of the same reason of Ashe and Jinx, those three champions are crazy strong, and on top of that Tristana does wonderfully even without a specific support, which is quite underrated right now. I do believe that people don't play him as enough as they should. It's a really niche champion, probably that's the reason of why people don't play him enough. But currently, I do believe that he sits in a really good spot. He is not really reliant on an enchanter right now. You can play him AP, you can play him AD with X Optics, or even a normal collector build. And I don't feel like you necessarily need an enchanter. That's for surely good. It's a really consistent champion anyways. Varus falls off to the B tier simply because Comet and Lethality does not work as well as it should. There's a lot of sustain right now into the game. And early priority, while it's really important, it's not working as it should. The Unit version is simply a weaker version of Ashe, Caitlyn, since those two champions play crit, so they will outscale you eventually. So I will put him in the B tier. Vayne is one of the best champions for solo queue. You can play her crit, lethality. I will never play her on it, personally. I do believe that she's fairly weaker because you give the enemy the time to actually play against you, unless you're playing against 3-4 tanks, which sometimes could happen. I would love to see her more. Xayah goes into the D tier. I do believe that every champion right now in the meta just has so much range, and as a Xayah, you will love the enemy to come towards you, but it never happens. Playing Xayah is the same as watching a wall and praying that it will come towards you. Yunara goes on A tier. I do believe that Yunara is one of the best champions actually released in the ADC category. The main issue of Yunara is that she's really hard to execute, so I can't really put her on S tier because of many tiny things such as how to space, how to use your movement, how to walk, and just like every single tiny click matters with this champion. So for the high elo, I will say that she's S tier, especially if you know how to space well and how to fight well. But if you are in a lower league and you still need like some time to actually learn her, there are a lot of tiny things that you need to understand and improve. So I will put her in the S tier. The only way to play Zeri right now is to have, again, an enchanter, which is something that you can't really control on your games. Playing it with an engager makes your lane not that strong. Other champions just have like so much more value in the laning phase. I wouldn't be playing her unless you are really, really talented as a hyper carry player. If you are playing higher leagues, if you already have some really good basics, climbing with this champion is surely possible. Just make sure that you can handle her. Hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good luck at ranking up.